start over again. And we've only minutes. And I wondered why. Oh, there they all are. Okay. Oh man. Okay. All right.
And,
Well,
and just real quick, Doug sends out his apologies for allowing the rookie to try to get this launched tonight. So
yeah. I clicked on the wrong button.
that's a.
We'll cover Scott for a little bit here because I need to get in present mode. So,
Well, I don't know what all you said when we started, but tonight, everybody, Joel's kind of going to run with it with the presentation, taking some questions. Doug had prior commitments, so unfortunately, just get myself and Joel this evening as we discuss his presentation. So as he's getting that loaded up, I'm going to kind of be quiet for a while and maybe chime in as he goes forward. So
I'm glad that we only wasted 9 minutes. Wow. I wondered where everybody was. It's like, this is a great show. Why wouldn't you watch?
They were all over waiting for you to start it. So.
Oh, my. Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's start it all over again. And I'll click back. Let me click over to this. And we'll click it all back and we'll start over again. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about tonight is 4,000 years of history that involves Jacob and Esau all the way through to 1946 with Hitler and all the way through to Gaza and all the way through. There's a Haman in every generation. There's a Hitler. There's a Gaza. There's a Khomeini from Iran. And Scott, you might want to mute.
I'm going to.
Okay, all right. So basically, they're hoping to eradicate the Jews. And so this is part 200 almost, because it happens so many times. And we'll present 4 or 5 cases where this has been rhyming and rhyming and rhyming. The point that I'm going to make with all of you tonight is that you're the Esthers of the Purim story. You're the intercessors. You have a task to do. So remember when Mordecai came to Esther and said, you need to go talk to the king, Ahasuerus. And she said, well, he'll kill me, And he said, well, if you don't, then help or hope will come from another source. And she went to the king and resolved the case. But keep in mind that Ahasuerus approved the attack in the first place, Haman's, request to attack the Jews. But then he also approved for her the chance for the Jews to fight back. That's going to play through again in this story as you see things move forward in this presentation. So let's continue on. So basically, we've got the Gaza war, which is part of the attack, this Purim type war situation, and then Iran and things like that. And yeah, it's modern day Hitler. Yeah, Hitler plays through in this too. So keep in mind that our leaders are Joe Biden and Barack Obama gave cash to Iran to be able to foment this war. Many years ago, they literally shoveled the cash at Iran. And maybe, do you remember the planes going over to Iran and literally dropping off cash for them? Well, what do you think they do? They build drones and missiles and other things like that. So basically, this is a CNN report here saying the wave of drones and missiles that flew towards Israel overnight on Sunday brought with it a new phase of tension, uncertainty, and confrontation in the Middle East. Well, that's an understatement. Iran launched the unprecedented attack in response to a suspected Israeli strike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria, earlier in the month. And so, but they launched 170 suicide drones, 120 ballistic missiles, 30 cruise missiles in response to one little tiny building being knocked out. And here's the problem. Yeah, King Ahasuerus was aware of, what he had granted to Haman to kill the Jews off. Our leaders, Biden, knew that this attack was going to occur. They knew exactly the day that Mark Biltz predicted it, and I'll show you that slide in just a second here. And the attacks came from Iran, which is technically Medo-Persia, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, technically Medo-Persia, and Yemen. Okay, but yet 99% was intercepted. Well, why would that be? Because God's involved in all of this. So once again, I said that King Ahasuerus knew about the attack on the Jews during the time of Esther, and he approved it. Well, here's the report from Reuters. And first on the left-hand side, it's from Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz from Israel 365 News, but then he's citing Reuters, which is on the right-hand side. On Sunday, Reuters cited a Turkish diplomatic source that said that both the U.S. and Iranian counterparts in the past week discussed the planned Iranian attack on Israel. And so, hi, Scott. You sitting in traffic. Yeah. All right. So, anyway, he's quiet right now. And so that's fine. So, the bottom line is your king, your Biden, knew about the attack and allowed it to occur. And obviously, you can tell that Israel knocked out a little building with some bad guys in it. And as a result, all of these missiles were launched. It doesn't make sense. And so, why would Biden allow this? You know, but this is historical, guys. You'll see it as we get through. And keep in mind that you're the intercessors. So you pray that God, the maker of heaven and earth, will not sleep because he can't sleep. And he will guard Israel and he will guard us as we go into these end times. And so, yeah, this is Psalm 121, 2 through 4. The Iron Dome is actually God. And we're praying for that to occur. So just keep that in mind. What I'm going to get at is this is all related to Purim. The whole story for 4,000 years, everything is related to Purim, and Pur is casting of lots, and Im would be plural. So in this case, we have a 2024 eclipse, not a blood moon, on Purim. 2025, another on Purim, but it's a blood moon that time, and then 2026. And it all relates to Jacob and Esau and Purim Fest. Yes, I'll explain Purim Fest in about 60 slides from now. Bear with me. But Purim Fest is going to make sense because that's 1946. And I'm telling you that the demonic side is quite aware of the timing and the meaning of this whole thing. And I'll explain it when I get to that slide. Okay, so this is Mark Biltz. I love Mark Biltz, and he has done a magnificent job over the years of explaining the blood moons and what things mean, and that if you have a new moon, you can have a solar eclipse. If you have a full moon, you can have a blood moon eclipse. And so he explains solar cycles to us. And in this case, he's written a book and he's out advertising that as of April of 2024. On exactly, and he nailed it, Nissan 3, that you would have a war with Iran starting. And he wrote this book about war. And he's basing it on the Feast of Purim and the eclipses and just this general ideology that Iran had to happen at some point in time. Why not? And I'll show you the verses from Daniel that he cites. They're really intriguing. So stick with me. So once again, Purim Fest. And he said, to quote Mark, a little bit of May is where we're going to see the attack for Iran. So April, May, in that time frame. But he did state specifically Aviv 3 or Nissan 3, okay? And that's when it occurred. On the 11th, the request was put out for airspace to be cleared so that Iran could attack, and that is Aviv Nissan 3, okay? And so he's citing these interesting eclipses coming up, and he's saying that based on this time frame, that the Gog-Magog war will be at the end. Okay, he agrees with Doug and me. I don't know where Scott is in all of this, but he basically says that at the end of the 7 years, Gog-Magog occurs. But in the meantime, this seems to be the Amalek War. This could be the Damascus War, which would be Isaiah 17:1. It could also be the Psalm 83 War. So you might see those wars foment and actually come to fruition in the next few years here. He's basing it on the eclipse patterns. Very interesting. So if you want to go to that Yanni or Janie Duvall's website, you can see how it's laid out in terms of, I'll just go back to the slide and you can see it better. Unfortunately, I have some things in the way here. There. Okay. So Iran's attack on Israel, what they're not telling you from Janie Duvall. Okay. So you can hit that on YouTube and see what Mark happened to say. Okay. Continuing on then. So Mark Biltz is citing Daniel 10 as the rationale for why the war would occur now. So let's just see the scripture and see what you think. Okay. In the 3rd year of Koresh, king of Persia, the word was revealed to Daniel, also called Belteshazzar. The word was certain, a great war on, and now I'm saying it's Nissan 3, April 11th of 2024. I'll show you why in just a second. He understood the word, having gained understanding in the vision. At that time, I, Daniel, had been mourning for 3 whole weeks. Okay, so we know we're going to see the 24th day coming up in just a second here. So until the 3 full weeks had passed on the 24th day of the 1st month. That's Aviv. That's Nisan. That's right now. And so basically, he started to pray and fast about the Great War on Nisan 3, which is the time that Iran contacted Biden and said, clear the airspace. Okay. That's pretty interesting. And Mark wrote a book about it too, saying this seems to be the time frame. It's conjecture, but it's pretty interesting. Okay. And you can see, April 13th, of course, the attack was launched, but they were warned of it on that Nisan 3. Okay. Now, Mark is also saying that the Shemitah cycle is 2029. So he's saying you can't start the final 7 years until 2029. We'll agree to disagree. I love Mark Biltz dearly. He's been a friend for 15 years. I talk to him regularly. I disagree with him, but I don't have a better answer for Shemitah and Jubilee years.
Hey,
Yeah.
Joel, is Mark still, I guess, with the majority on believing there's going to be a 7-year tribulation period? Is he sort of mainstream interpreting Daniel 9? When I say main, yeah, okay, so he's looking for a 7-year period as opposed to just a 3.5-year great tribulation period.
He's looking for a week of years, yes.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I'll mute myself now. Go.
Okay. All right. So continuing on, basically, Scott, if you can hear me, would you turn off the little message on there, because it's interrupting my ability to read. So anyway, the main thing is Mark wrote that book about Purim Fest, and he predicted these attacks would occur. Now, this is the Dead Sea, and the missile dropped in there. Yes, 99% of the missiles did no damage whatsoever, but still they were launched, and our presidents, our co-presidency, authorized it. Okay, our kings authorized this. So it's a Purim Fest. I'll continue on with this, and I'll show you the slides as we get to it. The other, there's weird politics going on across this too. So Saudi Arabia, basically, Yemen had to launch their missiles through Saudi Arabia to get to Israel. And during this time frame, on the 11th, I think it was, or something like that. Let's see. Well, it states April 14th, but it occurred a few days before. Saudi Arabia said, we will support Israel. Well, normally they would join in on the other side. But in this case, the Abraham Accords are working. So it looks like the states of Israel, the United States, Jordan, United Kingdom, and France all repelled the Iranian attack. When have you ever seen this where Saudi Arabia is on Israel's side? Things are changing, people. MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, is close friends with Jared Kushner, and that friendship is holding up. So this is just one more political thing that's very, very interesting. This is from the Jerusalem Post. And then continuing on, this is even weirder. On Nisan 3, on April 11th, you've got Israel set to normalize relationships with Indonesia, the largest Muslim majority country in the world. So it's amazing. As you see Israel going into attack from Iran, as the airspace is clearing, Indonesia is saying, we need to get in this Abraham Accord. So it's just bizarre how that would occur. And all at about the same time during Nisan 3, as Daniel is praying, as we're praying too, because we know Israel is going to come under attack. And this is JNS, so Jewish News Service. So amazing stories. So watch the backstories too. Very, very critical. And so then our president, co-presidency, Biden, is condemning the attack, but they're not saying that Israel is allowed to go fight back. And so it's kind of that Haman story again. And so, there's the attack, there's everything like that. And they're saying, well, Iran must pay the price, but they're not allowing Israel to do anything to make Iran pay the price. So very interesting, these backstories that are occurring. I'm telling you, in the Middle East, that if you're a coward and you cower, the heroes always punch the bullies. The cowards get attacked time and time again. It's a Middle Eastern thing. And you're going to say, well, Joel, you don't understand the Middle East. I lived in the Iranian house on Hamlin's campus. I'll show you the slide in a second here. This takes you back to George Bush when they threw the shoe at him. A shoe, your heel of your shoe, is an insult in the Middle East. So when they threw the shoe at him, that was a big insult. When Obama put his feet up on the table back in 2009, talking to Netanyahu, that was a huge insult in the Middle East towards Israel. And it showed his colors. Okay. So Carter, when he when the hostage crisis occurred on November 4th, he did nothing for 444 days. That's a sign of weakness. Fortunately, we had the hockey game in 1980. Otherwise, it was just depressing to be alive during that time frame because he would do nothing. And so it was a sign of weakness, and Iran was emboldened as a result of it. So once again, I mentioned that I lived my actual house right there that I lived at Hamlin on campus years ago, and it was the Iranian house. And so when we had the attack on November 4th, I had to protect my Iranian friends because there was hatred against Iran and Iranians. And these were wonderful people. They were all wealthy and intelligent, and they're lifelong friends. And so they were Shah supporters. If they would have gone back to Iran, they would have been killed more than likely. So it's just interesting. Keep in mind that there are factions. As Hitler came to power with maybe 3% of the vote, Khomeini came into power years ago in 1979 with really about 3% of the vote. Most Iranians are business people. They're normal people. This is just about 3% of the brown shirts like Hitler. Keep that in mind. Okay, continuing on. Couple of prophecies that I want you to square up in the process of all of this. That this is from Amir Sarfati. It's time for the Jews to go back home, but it was clear to him as the Iranian attack was coordinated by the American administration, as I showed you in the Reuters report. It's likely the Iranians gave warning that they were going to attack, and the U.S. assured them that they would not allow an Israeli response. The Biden administration, in the most monstrous way, continues to see Iran as an asset with which agreements must be reached. Boy, did he ever nail that. That is so accurate. So Amir's right on that. And then on the right-hand side, Amir has been going back now over the last year and said that it seems like these wars and these attacks against the Jews are going to get worse. Greater persecution is awaiting them. Jews, come home. Go home now. And so I wouldn't disagree with him. I truly believe that he is correct on this, that it is time to go back. And yes, Scott, did you have a point?
I was going to say possibly, but
Okay.
again, we did see in like Isaiah 11, where it talks about Judah and Israel being gathered, and that would be a messianic, after second coming. So definitely all of Judah is not going to be in the land when Yeshua returns. There will certainly be a remnant from Zechariah 12 and 14. But I don't think there's a biblical command for Judah to necessarily return. And they're actually using sort of racist policies. And I'll just say it, it's racism based on who your mama is to keep people like myself. If I even wanted to move to Israel right now, I would not be allowed to. So not trying to propagate any
somehow, some way, we need 144,000.
Well, there's more. You're talking about from Judah? There's only 12.
No, 144,000 from all the tribes. So somehow, some way, all the tribes have to come back. At least for sure.
Why do you think that they would have to be gathered back actually gathered to the land as opposed to distributed throughout the world?
Because it centers on the land. The wars, the Gog-Magog war at the end centers on it. Actually, the midpoint, when you have the Antichrist walking into Jerusalem, declaring himself to be God, that time frame, you have to have the players involved, and the 144,000 would have to be there by that time, at least.
Well, I mean, if I were Jewish, I would have probably already moved back. Obviously, if I were Messianic Jewish, I would have to lie to even be a citizen of the nation state of Israel, because they'll reject you if you state that you're a believer in Yeshua, even if you meet all the criteria for Jewishness. So, but again, I believe it's God that's using this policy to keep people like myself and Doug and we other Israelites from even thinking about moving back. I think God is using the nation state of Israel policy to keep us out. So, all right, I'll tune out now for a little bit.
Okay, I'll continue on. So that's Amir. And then, as I've mentioned before, this is Rabbi Kurt Schneider, and he prophesied the Israel war with Gaza 3 months before the war actually occurred. he said he felt it in his soul that there was going to be another Purim type of a victory, that the Jews would defeat Gaza, which they are doing, and they will defeat Iran at some point in time. And that would allow for more people to come back because, well, I'll get to the slides in a second. You have to have peace and tranquility in the land at some point in time, and they don't have it right now, obviously. So basically, the Purim War, is Gaza Edom, which is from Genesis 36. Are they Amalek? Who is Amalek? And what's going on with all of this? Basically, we don't know who the players are. We just know who hates Israel, and who hates God, for that matter. Another prophecy that's very interesting. This is from Yitzhak Shapira, and so he's saying there were 70 rockets launched at first on 413. He cites 70 as being ayin, which is the Hebrew letter, and that would be the gematria would be 70, and 70 nations. And so he's looking for that comparison to Gog, Magog. And I believe he believes, just like Mark Biltz and Doug Hamp and myself, that Gog Magog is at the end, not at the beginning. So there are many eschatologists out there right now saying, oh, the next thing is going to be Gog Magog. It won't be, guys. It won't be. It's going to take many years to get the logistics done and then get to Gog. And the way it lays out in the Bible, it should be at the end. Okay, but he's also saying the solar eclipse is a sign of Ezekiel 38:39. He really thinks that it was huge, and we'll see. I mean, he's a brilliant man, but he really thinks there's prophetic things occurring. He believes Yemen will ignite Gog at some point in time, and Yemen is constantly at war. So there is the Gog Magog war. The scholars that I happen to follow, including Doug Hamp, believe that it happens at the end, but that it is related in part to maybe a Joshua and a Caleb time, where you're supposed to be willing to fight and stand up with God to do your part, and we do our part too, as an Esther, say, as intercessors, and so we're setting up the chessboard to have Gog Magog occur. And it's going to logistically take time to get there, but Satan and the Antichrist, say, and the other players are playing against God, and he's the Grand Master, and he will defeat them. But it'll be interesting to watch it set up. So that once again, that's Ezekiel 38:39. So let's read a little bit from Ezekiel 38, just so you get the general idea of what I'm talking about with peace in the land and things like that. So the word of Adonai came to me, human being, turn your face toward Gog of the land of Magog, chief prince, that is Rosh. I think it's Nasa, but anyway, he's the Rosh of Meshech and Tuval, a region in Turkey, and prophesy against him. Say that Adonai Elohim says, I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tuval. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with all of your army, horses and horsemen, and all completely equipped, a great horde with breastplates and shields, all wielding swords. Paras, Ethiopia, and Put are with them, and all with breastplates and helmets. Gomer with all of its troops, the house of Torgama in the far reaches of the north with all its troops. Many peoples are with you. That's Ezekiel 38, 1 through 6. So we see something is the hooks. No one knows what the hooks are that are put into the jaws to draw Gog out. We just don't know what it is. But it seems to be at the tail end, because, prepare yourself, get ready, you and all your crowd gathered around you, and take charge of them. After many days have passed, you will be mustered for service in later years. That should be the Acharith Yamim, okay, or Shani. And you will invade the land that has been brought back from the sword, gathered out of many peoples, the mountains of Israel. They've been lying in ruins for a long time, and you've seen that in prophecy. But now Israel has been extracted from the peoples, and all of them are living there securely. Not the case right now. That's why Gog Magog is years away, people. You will come up like a storm, like a cloud covering the land, you and all your troops, and many other peoples with you. Adonai Elohim says, when that day comes, thoughts will well up in your mind, and you will devise a sinister scheme. You will say, I am going to invade the land of unwalled villages. Look at Zechariah 2:5, and you'll see that God is the firewall protecting Israel. So the wall doesn't matter. It's kind of a Torah thing. It's a little bit of Leviticus 25. So basically, I'm arguing that God is the firewall. So they are in unwalled villages right now because the missiles came through. Walls aren't going to stop these missiles from coming in. So God is the firewall. That's why I showed you that slide from Psalm 121. I will take by surprise these people who are at peace, living securely in all places without walls, bars, or gates. I will seize the spoil and take the plunder. Ezekiel 38. Okay, so I'm telling you, the globalists want the wars. They're stoking the passions of the wars. They're thrilled with the Gaza war. They're thrilled with Iran because they're neocons. They want war. Okay. I'm telling you that back in 2012, this was the cover of The Economist magazine. And they were already predicting that you would have Gaza fighters flying in the sky across to the Israel side, and Israel would be up in the sky too, fighting against each other, and the whole place would just be a cesspool. That's what they want. That was from 2012. Well, they're pushing hard for it. Okay, so what are we in? We're in an end times apocalyptic war. And so just get ready for it. Once again, be intercessors, be prepared to be intercessors because God is moving. And so my favorite verses are casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. That's 1 Peter 5:7-8. So that's where we're going into right now. This warfare, the sides picking sides, the nuclear confrontation that seems to be the Gog Magog war, World War III, and that's 7 to 8 years from now at a minimum. Could be 10 or 12 or 20. Okay, now let's take it back and go through some history so that you can see why this all matters. So we start out with Jacob, the good son, and Esau, and then we have Haman and Hitler, and then the final solution, things like that. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes, and that's Mark Twain, and he's accurate with that. So we should see a rhyme between Esau, he is Edom from Genesis 36. And so Esau was a cunning hunter. I wish Doug was here right now. He's supposed to cover this. Nimrod was a mighty hunter in the face of God. And Esau seems to be the same thing. And we don't know if that means hunting men or animals, but it didn't seem to matter. So we see Esau being compared to, he had no esteem for things of eternal value. He was profane, according to Hebrews 12:16. He's a metaphor, say, for the world, according to Matthew 13:38. So you'll see his God is his belly, and he didn't honor his parents because he married Canaanite girls. And so it's just a mess. And that's the ancient story from Genesis, and it carries through. The other names for Esau are Mount Esau, daughter of Edom, Seir, Mount Seir, southern Jordan, Arabia, Saudi Arabia, the wilderness, desert of the sea, Mount Paran, Teman, Dedan, Idumea. Herod was an Idumean, Bozrah, Petra down there, Amalek, Midianites, Ishmaelites. So the main thing is Romans 9:11-13 is Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. And you could say loved less, but it looks like Esau is Edom, and he had a master plan from day one to kill off all of Jacob's seed. And that's what he's talking about. Yeah, Scott.
And Joel, real quick, I believe it is prophecy related, but that passage in Romans 9 are deterministic brothers. I call them Augustinians, and Calvin just dusted it off. If they only understood that that's corporate, in other words, Jacob meaning Israel and Edom or Esau meaning the world or Rome, then we wouldn't have people believing that God programmed a bunch of robots to either be elect or either damned to the lake of fire.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, if we just look at it as corporate election, as opposed to Joel and Scott just happened to get, win the God lottery, and he'd elected us to be saved, as opposed to an eternity in the lake of fire or being destroyed. But and again, it does factor into prophecy, because when you understand that Israel is spread all over the world, and it's not just the land, it's not just the 20 million Jews, because otherwise God's word is a liar, because it says that Israel will be too many to count, more than the sands of the see in the stars, and certainly 20 million is a lot of people, but it's nowhere near the amount of the total amount that are now in our Israel. So anyway, continue on, my friend.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So this is from Chabad, and that's an Orthodox Jewish organization. And the Amalekites, rather, the descendants of Amalek, were an ancient biblical nation living in the land of Canaan. They were the first nation to attack the Jewish people after the Exodus from Egypt. They were seen as the archetypical enemy of the Jews. The nation of Amalek is long gone, but they live on as eternal enemies that we battle on a daily basis. Eliphaz, the son of Esau, the patriarch of Jacob's brother and sworn enemy, and his concubine Timnah had carried Amalek. So Amalek is the grandson of Esau. Amalek grew up in Esau's household, imbibing Esau's pathological hatred of Jacob's descendants along the way. And so Scott is correct. Jacob's seed is all of the sons, okay, 12 sons. His offspring became the nation of Amalek, and they lived in the south land of Israel, also known as the Negev. So, continuing on with a little bit more from Chabad, the mitzvah to destroy Amalek, which is genocide, that's Deuteronomy 25:19, implies that no trace of Amalek's existence could be left, nothing. Explain the sages, could serve as a reminder of Amalek's name, not even an animal about which. So basically, when Saul was supposed to kill off Agag, not even an animal was supposed to exist. And Saul wouldn't go through with that. He probably liked Agag, and he wanted to keep the animals too. And so then Samuel killed Agag himself. And Agag, according to Jewish Midrash, Agag sired a child who would keep Amalek's lineage alive some 500 years. Later, we have Haman the Agagite. So it's historical, and we'll get to more of that. Now we're going to cover Haman. So we're going to cover the players and things like that. This is from basically 483 to 482 BCE, and it's called Purim Fest. And you'll see that meaning as we move along in this video, this meeting. Okay, King Ahasuerus, kind of a bumbling monarch. He loved Vashti. She didn't love him. She wouldn't dance for him, so he deposed her. Haman, boo, is the devious villain, okay, and he's the bad guy. You'll see Haman pop up throughout history. I'll point out some more Hamans over time. Mordecai is the wise sage, good guy, and Queen Esther is the hero of the story. But the Jews are part of this too, because they're allowed to fight back. And so that's our cast from this time frame. And so we have this confrontation where Esther is supposed to only be called in by the king, but she walks into the king's chamber knowing that she could die. But Mordecai said, if you don't do it, help will come from another source. And so we as a people group need to intercede like Esther to pray for God's will to be done as we lead up to these events in Gog Magog. So just keep that in mind, that this confrontation will be occurring time and time again. Just watch for it. Okay. Now, let's move forward here and keep in mind. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think I skipped through a slide, but that's fine. Okay, I'll just explain it to you. So in the case of Haman, he had 10 sons, and they were killed and then hung. And that's going to play through again in 1946. But now let's move forward to 1492. Queen Jezebel, same name, okay, kicks out the Jews from Spain in 1492 as Columbus is sailing across to America to find a new land. She's kicking out all the Jews. And that's my family. I'm Sephardi, and we came up from the Iberian Peninsula, and we were kicked out at that point in time. So basically, she didn't kill anybody, but she kicked them out, and then Columbus found a new land. So people moved there instead. So once again, we think Columbus was Jewish. She is a Jezebel. But the Jews won again. They found a new place to live and they moved, but they had to move back to Africa or other places. My family came up to France and Belgium and places and the Netherlands. So then we move forward 400 years to 1891 and especially 1892. And in Russia, we have the pogroms occurring. And so we have basically 400 years later, we have the imperial decree was promulgated in 1891 through 1892, ordering the expulsion from the city and the government of Moscow, all Jewish artisans, brewers, and distillers, and they were all kicked out. Okay, and it was done by Tsar Alexander III. The Haman person in the story is Duke Sergei Alexandrovich of Russia, but the Jews won out again. They went to other places, and unfortunately Germany. But yeah, the cast is very similar. You've got the king, you've got the Haman, and you've got the Jewish people, and you've got heroes and losers. Moving forward, now this is the key part of the story. This is what I wanted to tell when I came to Scott and Doug in the first place, 1946. So, and keep in mind also, before I get into that Rome was kind of part of this too. When I talk to my Jewish friends about this, my rabbi friends, they say Edom is Rome. It sounds similar too. So just keep that in mind. There is that factor. So the players, again, the cast. Yeah, Scott.
Just going to say that's something I learned from Halisa Elwine, who loves to dig into the Mishnah and the Talmud and some of the Jewish sources that for forever and a day the rabbis have always identified Edom as Rome.
Yes.
In other words, so I think that's something that most mainstream Christian, especially in the dispensational realm, are completely unaware of, or either they would discount it, even if they were told it, and they would just think it was some Jewish fable. But the connections that they make to show that Rome is Edom, I think it's airtight. It's like beyond all doubt that what we see that morphed, those two iron legs have essentially morphed into where I think we're right now at the toe stage, if you will, with some miry clay.
Did Rome do anything to prevent Hitler's actions?
No, when you do the research into it, they actually were very pro Nazi. So again, there's been many books. It's been years since I did a deep dive on it, but the Vatican was deeply involved in World War II and what happened to mainly the Orthodox Jews, not necessarily people like what's his name, the philanthropist that funds all these. You've heard the rumors and books have been written about him. I'm trying to think of his name right now. The rich guy that funds all these leftist DAs, Soros. Soros. Soros is Jewish, and there's also many Orthodox Jews that have written books on how some of and this is where I'm always careful when I do this, some who claim to be Jews, who very likely are not Jews, at this upper echelon of evil, that again orchestrated this, or at least they thought they orchestrated it. Meanwhile, God's up there, just letting them do what He wants them to do when it comes to how we arrived at this place today. So anyway, my bad, Joel. Go ahead, man. You're doing great.
That's fine. Thank you. Okay, so basically, Purim Fest 1946. I'm getting to it. We're a couple of slides away. The cast is Hitler, 10 men, and the Jews. Okay, and you know what happened to 6 million of the Jews, but also the Gypsies too. So were Hitler and the Nazis demon possessed? I'll try to make a case for that today. Okay, so once again, as I mentioned, in the case of Haman, he had 10 sons. So I'm reading from Esther 9. The same day the king had been told the number of those killed in Shushan, the capital, he said to Esther the queen, if the Jews have slaughtered 500 men in Shushan, the capital, and the 10 sons of Haman, what have they done in the rest of the royal provinces? Many, many more. Now, whatever your request, you will be granted it. Whatever you want, it will be done. Whatever more you want, it will be done. Esther replied, if it pleases the king, let the Jews in Shushan act again tomorrow in accordance with today's decree. Also have Haman's 10 sons hanged on the gallows. Now, they're already dead. She asked for that. And this is specific. I don't know why she asked for it, but she did. So the king ordered these things to be done. The decree ordered in Shushan hanged Haman's 10 sons. So the Jews of Shushan assembled on the 14th day of the month of Adar and killed 300 men in Shushan, but they did not touch the spoil. Interesting how that happens throughout the Bible too. Okay, so the 10 sons, their names are Parshandata, Dalphon, Aspata, Porata, Adalia, Aridata, Paramashta, Arasai, Aradai, and Vaisada. Okay, it's just interesting because there were 10 Nazis hung, and I'll show you that. The seventh was the most evil by far, Julius Streicher. And I'm going to argue that he's demonic. We'll see what you think when you read the CBS report in just a moment here. So in the Torah scroll, so this is my Chumash, and it's like a Torah scroll. Okay, hopefully you can kind of see it there. And bottom line is that there are oversized letters and undersized letters, and that doesn't make any sense at all. I'm going to make a case that what you see in the scroll right here with the undersized letters and the oversized vav have meaning, and we'll see if you agree or not. Okay, so this is that scroll that we just watched, and it should look like a balance sheet of the 10 sons. So Ish would be the man, and then Va'et would be the specific person and his name. And so I listed those names, and you can see these letters are smaller than usual. And this one, the Vav down below, is large. Oh, there's Doug. Yeah. So I'll let him in. Hold on a second here. Head to the stage. So basically, these are textual differences than the standard text that Doug and I read. And if we're reading a Christian text that happens to have Hebrew, you won't see these differences because I just looked at my NIV interlinear and it's not there. This is the interesting thing where you'll see these small letters and the larger one. And what I'm positing based on what the rabbis tell me is that the Vav is the 6th millennium. The 707 would be the 3 letters put together. The Vav is 6, as I mentioned. The Tav is a 400. The Shin is a 300. The Zayin is a 7. It's 5707, 1946. And you're going to say, well, Joel, that's just rabbinic stories and things like that. No. Well, Doug, you can see the letters. You can tell they're smaller, right?
It's really small on my screen, so yeah.
Okay, all right. So I'll just continue on. The main thing is this Julius Streicher is the main case behind it. So let's continue on. And I'm having problems all of a sudden. Let me just, I see what I did. Okay. So let's go on. So the names have meaning again. So Parshan Dasa is distances. Dalphon is door. The next one is gathering. The next one is backwards. These all have meanings. I don't know what to draw from that, but it is interesting. Names, maybe you remember in Genesis 5, the first 10 patriarchs of the Bible mean man is appointed mortal sorrow. The blessed God shall come down. His death shall bring despairing comfort. That's what those names mean according to Chuck Missler. Very interesting. So once again, Hitler seems to be the Haman. Streicher seems to be one of the 10. And so according to Hitler, Streicher, Julius Streicher, then a teacher at Nuremberg. At first, he too had a holy conviction of the mission and the future of this movement. What a hideous monster. But they're all monsters. Streicher, the Jew is a devil in human form. It is fitting that he be exterminated, root and branch. That's our Streicher person. So this is the Esther story, Purim story popping up one more time. So here's the actual radio archives from CBS from 1946. From Tishri, and the trial concluded during the 10 days of awe leading up to Yom Kippur, and then they were hung on... I'll show you the slide. Okay, so this is CBS News. He walked steadily the 6 feet to the first wooden step, but his face was twitching. As the guard stopped him at the bottom of the steps for the identification formality, he uttered this piercing scream, Heil Hitler. This is Streicher. The shriek sent a shiver down my back. We all expected that sometime during the procedure, the shout Heil Hitler would ring out. Wild-eyed Jew hater Julius Streicher bellowed out that greeting and followed it as he climbed the 13 stairs with the words, "Now I go to God. Purim Fest 1946 goes now to God." As its echo died away, an American colonel standing by the steps said sharply, "Ask the man his name." In response to the interpreter's query, Streicher shouted, "You know my name well." The interpreter repeated his request, and the condemned man screamed, "Julius Streicher." As he reached the platform, Streicher cried out, "Now it goes to God." He was pushed the last 2 steps to the mortal spot beneath the hangman's rope. The rope was held back against a wooden rail by the hangman. Stryker was swung suddenly to face the witnesses and glared at them. Suddenly he screamed, "Purim Fest, 1946." And according to this author, Purim is the Jewish holiday celebrated in the spring, commemorating the execution of Haman, the ancient persecutor of the Jews from the Old Testament. Continuing on, a commotion broke out in the entrance to the gym. Two GIs propelled a resistant Julius Stryker through the gym door back to his cell. The guards had to force Stryker into his clothes at and he refused to give the American colonel his name, screeching out Heil Hitler. This is another report that's similar, but he did scream Purim Fest again. And then he also said, "Someday the Bolsheviks will hang you." After Stryker disappeared through the trap door, an eerie moan persisted. He wouldn't die, people. Everybody that was hung before him and after him died. He was so demonic he couldn't be killed. So basically, Woods, the man that was in charge of hanging him, had to go down and stab him repeatedly until the moaning, the demonic, I added, moaning stopped. He was hung, but he wouldn't die. And he was hung on, so basically during, this is Heap Cal's reprint of that time frame. 16th of October, 1946 is the 21st of Tishri, Hoshana Rabbah. So it's amazing that the justice system in Germany, in the Nuremberg system, concluded that they would be hung during the 10 days of awe, and then they were literally hung on Hoshana Rabbah in that 1946 year. Just amazing. And that's Queen Esther pointing her finger at these horrible sons. And she asked for them to be hung in addition to already being killed. Now, it should have been 11. It should have been 11 because there was Goring involved too. And he was the type of guy that liked to wear women's undergarments. So he was kind of that kind of guy. So he took cyanide and killed himself before the hanging. So it only made 10. He was the 11th. And so according to the Jews, basically Haman's daughter jumped off the roof, suicide, rather than face her father's temper. So it's interesting. Either way, it was 10 in Haman's time, and it was 10 in Hitler's time. Very similar. Purim Fest, 1946. Okay, now we're up to 2024. So once again, Purim, the eclipses are very, very interesting. This 4,000-year fight between Jacob and Esau is coming to its close. It will occur on some year in the future, Gog Magog, and basically I'm saying that the eclipses matter. Just watch them. Netanyahu was born during a four-peat of eclipses on Passover, Sukkot, Sukkot. Why am I blanking on it? But anyway, that was in 1949, 1950, as the Jews won their initial war. And then his eclipse was his birthday, and that was a partial solar eclipse. And then also Ali Khamenei from Iran was born in 1939 on an eclipse in Pisces. Very interesting. And then once again, Mordecai was a Benjamite in the Esther story. So there is this consistent theme all the way through, as history is rhyming and repeating at times. Now, who are the players moving forward? I'm going to argue consistently that it's O'Biden, and this 15-year-old kid back in 2015, after a near-death experience, said, "I saw heaven, I saw the Gog Magog war, and the rabbi asked him, who was the man that you saw as Gog? And he said, that man on the lower right-hand corner, Obama. Okay, so we'll see if it happens through his prophecy. But I want to show you this. This is very interesting. This is the locust king from Amos 7, 1 through 3. Okay, but it's only in the Septuagint. So I argue, Doug and I both read Hebrew and Greek, but the intriguing thing is that when you dig into the Septuagint, it's not literally accurate, but it's very interesting. So this is the Septuagint again. And the Lord God showed me, and behold, a swarm of locusts coming from the east, and behold, one caterpillar, King Gog. And it came to pass when he had finished devouring the grass of the land that I said, Lord God, be merciful. Who will raise up Jacob? For he is small in number. Repent, O Lord, for this, and it shall not be, saith the Lord. So that's Amos again. Very interesting. When this particular president came into office, he immediately started to bomb Libya, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Somalia, and Yemen, and he got a peace prize from that. Very impressive. So there are many anti-messiahs in the world today. It's not just one guy. And even if the anti-messiah, the antichrist, is alive today, there might be another one. You never know. So we don't want to guess yet. But there are many other players. But this eternal story of Jacob and Esau and Haman and Mordecai, it's playing through time and time and time again. It's playing through in Gaza, and it's playing through. So, with Biden and Obama saying they won't support Israel in a counterattack, it plays through again and again and again. This is from Axios. So basically, and then it plays through in another way too, when you have the United Nations with their little beast there, and you have the 10 horns in Revelation 13 and Revelation 17. Why do we have 10 sons of Haman? Why do we have 10 horns of leaders or power centers or whatever they happen to be? And why do the players kind of remind you of, the beast? It looks like a leopard. Well, it reminds me of Germany in some ways. The bear kind of sounds like Russia. The lion, Great Britain. The dragon sounds like China. So who knows? It's conjecture. Couple last things, and then we're pretty much done. It's 8:00, so that's impressive. Some prophecies over the years. I want to kind of settle things down a little bit. Yes, these three men all said that America is under judgment, and it's hard to disagree with them right now. So that's Dimitri Duduman, David Wilkerson, and Henry Gruver. This is the most interesting one of the bunch. This is from a 1968 Norwegian woman, evangelist Emmanuel Minos, met with her and listened to her story, and he threw her story away thinking, this is ridiculous. This is the stupidest story I've ever heard in my life. But all of the things that she said are coming true. I will not see it, but you will. Then suddenly Jesus will come and the Third World War breaks out. It will be a short war. She saw it in the vision. All I've seen of the war before is only child's play compared to this one, and it will be ended with a nuclear atom bomb. And the air will be so polluted, one cannot draw one's breath. It will cover several continents, America, Japan, Australia, and the wealthy nations. The water will be ruined, contaminated. We will no longer till the soil. The result will be only a remnant will remain. The remnant will be in the wealthy countries, will try to flee to the poor countries, but they will be as hard on them as they were on them in the first place. And you're seeing some of those things occur right now. Now, this is just a little snippet of her whole vision of what occurred, but I want you to go ahead and find this and listen to it. It's a very, very very interesting thing. So basically, that's about it for right now. I just want to tell you that Gog Magog is not going to happen next week or next month. It's going to be years away. And you'll see the logistics, and you'll be part of this Purim story, Purim Fest again, just like you've seen me repeat it a few times throughout this whole story. So don't be afraid. Pray. Be a part of the people that are intercessors. Don't be a part of the problem. Scott, what were you going to say?
Now, I was just say just one and very, very minor quibblish pushback as far as I would concur with you and agree that as far as the very end game of the Gog Magog war,
Yep.
Getting to the end, yeah, we're at a minimum, we're 3.5 plus years away. But at the same point in time, I do believe when things start to be fulfilled from a logistic standpoint,
yep,
it would not, in this world right now, it would not take much. If a nuclear bomb went off, or some type of dirty bomb, or an EMP, or a chemical or a biological attack, or a virus is released in the water. I'm just saying it wouldn't take long for things to spiral and accelerate in this day and age. Logistically, as far as the swarm coming down, and a horde of an army, yeah, that's going to take some time. But as far as setting the stage, I think it could be set really, really quick. Like seriously, by next week, we could, things could be headed, and we might be. And again, I know we differ on this. Depending on what we see or don't see over the next few weeks, and I'm not discounting anything until after Shavuot, as far as something significant which might happen prophetically this year.
I'm hearing from my Jewish friends that they do not want to fight going into Passover. So at least we'll get through that Daniel timeframe that I quoted in Daniel 10, where you go to about the 24th of Nisan, and then potentially you might see the war occur. So I agree with you that it could happen fast. Haller keeps on arguing that every week, that things come into place very quickly. And
yeah. I mean, again, it looked obviously from a logistics standpoint, it's not happening like tomorrow as far as any mass invasion. But I mean, when you just start to look at the countries being listed there, Joel, and how Islam is essentially the eastern leg of the Roman Empire, it's modern day Rome with an Islamic. I don't want to say flavor. I mean, it's totally Islamic, and all those countries that are described just happen to be Islam. And I believe it also says many peoples with you, and that would certainly describe if Indonesia and other Muslim countries decided to join in on this future war. It's always fascinated me that Sheba and Dedan are standing on the sidelines, and and Tarshish, which I believe that ultimately represents the West, sort of like Britain and America, etc., the Isles of the Sea. But it's going to be. I would just encourage everybody to just keep your eyes open for these, maybe for this next 2 months. If we can get through that, then maybe we'll have another year or two before all heaven breaks loose on earth. So,
yeah,
or another few years.
Some of the people are asking, are we trying to predict the future? No, not at all. Not at all.
I mean, we can sit there and go with scripture and say there's certain things that definitely are going to happen. What I always refuse to do. There's a guy named Weather Bill who is dogmatic that Yeshua is returning in 28, that everything kicks off, next year. I mean, he's dogmatic. He goes on Messiah 2030's post and always posts, "You're wrong, and here's every reason you're wrong." And I finally had to block him because he's so dogmatic.
Right.
It's one thing if you want to believe it, but I think and again, I've talked to the producer of Messiah 2030, and I said, the only thing I would have done, make your case, but put a question mark on the back end. Give yourself some cover so in fall, in spring of 2027 or fall of 2027, if events have not happened by then, you might have egg on your face, and you may only be a year or two off. Was my conversation with him. So I think I've talked to him, and when he releases part 4, hopefully we can get him on the RoundTable, because at that point in time, he's not concerned about the message. I'll put it that way. So.
It would have been fun to have Doug on the show, because he would have noticed the textual variances, and and then also I probably, if I would have known that Doug was going to be on the show, I was going to show the bite marks between Esau kissing supposedly Jacob back in Genesis, but that's in the Masoretic marks. So.
Well, I apologize to everybody. I'm driving over to North Georgia tonight to avoid Atlanta rush hour traffic tomorrow getting over here. So I'm going to go do some trout fishing.
And I apologize that I hit the wrong button. I mean, I launched the wrong session. Too many screens going.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Well, all right. Anything else you want to add, Joel, before we sign off for the evening? Or
I think we'll sign off.
If there are any questions that you saw, if you want to, if you saw any comments or questions that might be good to discuss.
There is.
I'm driving, so I haven't looked at any comments.
Right. There were some good questions, but the problem is now it's tough to find them. This is from TIK 71. It prophesied 490 years of judgment in Israel, holy city, and then after 483 years cut off, leaving finally 7 years. So he's a 7-year guy. Okay, yep. Scott, you're a 3.5-year guy. I'm a 7-year guy, or 7 years of weeks, or a week of 7 years.
Yeah. Yeah, our friend Gavin would call me a hemipreterist, and which drives me absolutely nuts to even associate me with preterism, because everybody automatically thinks 70 AD preterism, whereas I just believe the first half of Daniel 9:27 was fulfilled, and certainly Yeshua has not returned yet. So I mean, again, if we're gonna we definitely shouldn't divide over 3.5 years, because it's all going to work out in the wash. I mean, if the two witnesses come on the scene, whether they be individuals or corporate, and our bank accounts are all shut off, and we see an abomination of desolation, and we can't buy or sell, I think, you, Doug, all our 7-year people, I would hope everybody would go, you know what? We were incorrect. I don't think it would take much adjustment for those that are not pre-tribulation rapture to unlearn the 7 year that everybody's been taught. Let's just be honest. I mean, you read it first before you believed it. And
so I guess I hope that I explained the patterns, the rhyming nature of Haman. Scott, did you see it?
Oh yeah, I mean, again, it's especially when it comes to how Judah has been treated throughout history by Edom or Haman, or the Hamans of the day, whether it be Queen Isabel, whether it be the czars, whether it be Hitler. I mean, that's why some of these that are these days promoting African only Judah, only the Africans or the Israelites. It's almost as if they're refusing to read the history of the Jews, and I've got several books that I would like to show them just how horrible those who, whether they're Jewish or not. If you say you're Jewish, why in the world would anybody in times past want to be Jewish and ostracized, living in the Roman Catholic rule, and again, and as a second class citizen quite often. So I just that's the biggest nonsense. And again, I have no doubt that Judah migrated south to Africa. I have no doubt that some of the Israelites, even though they were initially exiled north, they may have fled south even before the invasion. They could have migrated south after the exile. But
sure.
But again, that's what I like to focus on, is how this is how God used the division and Israel's apostasy to multiply and sow seed throughout the world. And we just happen to be witnessing the end game when people are understanding it.
Yep. So I think that's about it then. Hopefully I'll hit the right button to close this meeting off.
And I think you just hit in, Joel.
I think I do.
Yeah, we'll see y'all. We'll see y'all next week, maybe. I'm not sure if we're doing it next week or not. And I think Doug might be busy next week. But if not, if Doug's busy, I might find somebody. I'll get Maria on. She's always entertaining. We can talk about Donald.
Okay.
So,
all right.
All right.
Great.
Everybody
be blessed. Thank you. Yep. Bye-bye.
All right.